Scranton, from the top of West Mountain in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Good morning, everybody. This is 94.3 FM, The Talker. This is Sanity Check, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike. In studio today, we have Betsy Summers. We got Frank Sorick. For the first time, guys, since we started this show almost 3 years ago, either myself or Mike are not going to be on air. Mike Lacey has been in Wilkes-Barre this past week. His mother passed away, so we were certainly with Mike, and our prayers are with Mike and his family, but he is on his way back to Texas, so he will not be on air today. So that all being said, it's us. We got Frank Sorick, we got Betsy Summers. Welcome, guys.
Good morning.
As usual, we'd like to let people know if you want to start your weekend off right, and it looks like it's going to be a beautiful weekend. You could call 888-577-4487, blow off a little steam, let the blood pressure go down, and give us a call. You could call us about everything, but I think we're going to start off this week. Boy, did we go to a lot of different events. I mean, Frank and Betsy and John D. Libertarian. I mean, it seemed like one thing after another. But let's jump on this SB 76. This past week, Betsy, you were one of the speakers at Genetti's in Wilkes-Barre, and you're one of the supporters of SB 76. I found that it was enlightening, Frank, and certainly as president of the taxpayers. You are supporting SB 76. For those who are not familiar with SB 76, it will eliminate property tax.
Correct. And anyone who wants to find out more about that, I urge to go to realreform76.com, and it will answer most of your questions about the legislation.
Our own David Madeira was the host there, or the master of ceremonies, as we might say. And as always, you could listen to David here, 6 to 9, Monday through Friday. And once again, I looked at a lot of different things and just watching that Betsy on stage, and we've been talking a lot about the lines being blurred sometimes, and certainly we're gonna touch on what's happening in Luzerne County at County Council, but we had two Republicans supporting that bill. Aaron Coffer and Melanie Madeira were on stage. We had a Democrat, Mullery, Gerry Mullery, and we had a Libertarian, Betsy Summers. And just watching that, and I hope people, as you go into not only the primary, which is just a few days from now, but also the general election, that we all have the courage to vote for the individuals as opposed to voting for the party.
Correct.
And we have to look at, Betsy, I know you're ready to jump in here. What we have to look at here is that there's so many different issues. So I think we all have to identify what are the most important issues for the individual. I mean, it could be property tax. I mean, there's so many other issues out there. For myself, I'm going to look at who supports free and equal elections, maybe court reform, certainly SB 76. And what happened at that forum, Gerry Mullery, who is now it is a state representative, he said, listen, it ain't going to happen this year. But it's important. If we feel as though this is important, and certainly this issue, and I've said it, and certainly David Madeira said it, to me it's immoral what goes on. I mean, the cornerstone of our Constitution and our democracy was property rights. And you never own your own home when you're renting for the rest of your life. That's how I see it, right, Betsy?
If you don't pay your taxes in 2 years, they will take your home. They will put it up for sale, and it's gone. So, I, as a libertarian, you know me, I hate taxes.
Right.
Boy, I'll tell you. And so we have to fund our schools another way. And they've come up with a way to do it through sales tax, which is a usage fee, basically, and an increase in the income tax. Right. Now, I think if we can get enough people elected who will vote for this, then we can work on eliminating that increase in the income tax. And just through fiscally responsible spending in our state house, which is unheard of now.
Right. Frank,
I'm a little biased on this issue, and for good reason. As Betsy said, taxes, she's against all taxes. I mean, taxes are a necessary evil. But I look around at property tax, and one of the things that I keep noticing is that Pennsylvania is not getting any bigger. And unless we decide to invade New Jersey or Delaware, I don't foresee Pennsylvania growing in size. So therefore, the taxation or the amount of property we can levy to tax doesn't seem to be growing. On the other hand, when we talk about sales tax, since I've been on the planet, I don't recall prices ever dropping. I mean, did I miss the memo? Have prices gone down? So in my opinion, any sales tax or 1% sales tax would continue to rise with inflation, thereby always increasing the amount of dollars raised by sales tax. So I mean, that's my opinion there, is that the sales tax revenue can continue to grow, where property tax revenue has to, consistently to be raised.
Or continue to put burden on those that are,
right.
and more seniors and
right.
people that have spent their lifetime building that equity or feeling as though that they have a little security. If you don't have security in your own home,
right.
What do you have? And what Gerry Mullery had said, and the reason he said this, he says, listen, and he said, this ain't happening, Frank. Mm-hmm. There's the support for it.
Right.
But it's not happening because the Republican leadership will not let it out of committee, or they will squash it.
Right.
And he came right back and he said, even though Gerry is a Democrat, and he says, quite honestly, the Democrat leadership don't want it to come out of the House either.
Yeah, I was going to say that the chairman and vice chairman, one Republican, one Democrat, the chairman and vice chairman of the House Finance Committee are sitting on this bill as if, they're not letting it out. And neither one of them, they're both pointing their fingers at each other saying, well, it's the Democrats, it's the Republicans. The truth of the matter is they don't want it out because they're afraid of it.
Now, it will. I think it will get passed in the Senate.
In the Senate, right. And that's what he said.
Yeah. Our House of Representatives. So, but the sad thing is, we have 115 candidates running.
Thank you, Betsy.
Unopposed in the November election,
right.
And I've started cross-referencing them to a vote that was taken in the fall.
Right.
And so there's going to be like 100 guaranteed incumbents who have voted no on this,
right.
And nobody's running against them.
How do you like that,
Eddie Day
folks?
Pashinski, one of them.
And who's running against Eddie?
Nobody.
Oh, yes, they are.
Well, currently the Republicans have nobody.
Nobody.
So as a Republican in Luzerne County and within the sound of our voice right now, they need to write in the independent candidate. And who would that be, Betsy?
Oh, gee. Betsy Summers.
So Republicans, please write in Betsy Summers and thereby stealing the Republican nomination and challenging Eddie Day Pashinski and giving him some real opposition.
Yeah, well, I will definitely be on the ballot as a Libertarian. Mm-hmm. We don't submit our petition signatures until August 1st. But this gives us time. It
gives us plenty of time.
To get other independents, third-party candidates on the ballot for these 100 spots.
And you said that. You said that at a forum, and you said, listen, you don't necessarily have to run as a Libertarian. You could run as an independent. You could run as a Green. You could run as a Constitution Party. If this is an issue, right, Betsy?
Right.
If this is an issue that you feel strongly about, and this is what Gerry Mullery really was trying to get to, is if, in fact, that this is an issue that you want, it's not going to... He said he did mention that it'll probably come out of the Senate, but the powers to be were going to use because this had already failed in the House, they're not allowed to reintroduce the same bill. So it very likely what would happen, Frank, is it's for the next legislative session,
right?
Which would mean
we
that
have
people
to
vote them out and vote for people that will vote. If this is your issue, you need to vote for a Melanie Madeira. You need to vote for an Aaron Coffey. You need to vote for a Betsy Summers. And that's where I say, will we have the courage? Will the people that are listening have the courage to vote for people that on their issues, not necessarily on their party, and that's one of the problems that we have. I mean, either with free and equal elections, with the straight party ballot vote, all these other little things that are thrown in there to throw up these obstacles. But we can do it.
Scranton needs to retain Kevin Haggerty. As far as I'm concerned, he's been a strong supporter of 76 of late, and these are the folks we need to make sure stay in the House of Representatives so that we can eventually pass 76.
Talking about Lackawanna and certainly the home rule, and I want to touch on that a little bit too. Is we were at the county council meeting in Luzerne, and Lackawanna has this whole home rule thing coming up, and you could vote yes or vote no. I do want people to understand that as an independent, and I had to ask this question. So if I had to ask this question, I'm sure there's a lot of independents, that Libertarians, Greens, Constitution Party, people that identify other than a Republican or Democrat. If you live in Lackawanna County, you have the ability to vote on this change for home rule. Now, certainly, we're very familiar. The three of us here are very familiar with home rule in Luzerne County. And once again, we see the blurred lines, Frank. I mean, Betsy, you know that. I mean, when we look at county council, we look at a Kathy Dobash, a Republican. Then we look at an Ed Braminski, a Democrat. And we look at those, at least in our opinion, of people that stand up for the property, for the taxpayer.
And this is not an issue of party. These are people, as you mentioned, a Republican and a Democrat working together to do what's right for the county of Luzerne.
And then we have somebody like a Harry Never Say No to a New Tax Haas.
I'm ashamed to say he's a Republican.
and I have heard that it pains him to pass tax increases.
He's always pained.
He is. I think Mr. Haas is one of those sadists that enjoy pain. So passing that tax is really a pleasure while it's paining him.
But here's my plug for the home rule. As much as they've had problems and getting to perhaps maybe what we would like to see happen with home rule, and I think they're going to get there with more representation. We have gotten somebody on county council like an Ed Braminski, even though he won originally, but somebody like a Kathy Dobash. Yeah. And quite honestly, getting back to this, SB 76, PSEA, PSEA, the teachers union, are very much against,
of course,
SB 76. So Kathy Dobash actually asked in the meeting, both to Houck and Harry Haas, never say no to a new tax, Harry Haas. Why he would be opposed, or what was his opposition, or as a PSEA member,
would that affect his
vote? I thought that was a very legitimate question, and no, it wasn't. They didn't go to that fact of saying, no, good question, Kathy.
Let me explain why I'm not biased.
It was, how dare you? How dare you even bring this up? And here is why I would support, if I was in Lackawanna County today, I would vote yes. And I'm sure they're going to go through a lot of minutia and all the same problems that we had down in Luzerne County. But for me, once you expand our representation, and I've said this before, if it was up to me, I'd double the size of the legislature. As people are driving and running.
It is harder in Luzerne County with the old form of government. Now, I was one who supported the change in government, and there are parts of me that say, hey, we made a mistake in Luzerne County. We jumped out of the frying pan right into the fire. But it does certainly seem that it's harder to keep a lid on things in Luzerne County.
Doesn't it seem that way?
It does, because you do have the Ed Braminskis or the Kathy Dobashes saying, no, this isn't right.
And you got a Sorokas that just got on there, and there's another Democrat. And of course, you still have the Urbans that are, people that are really out there raising questions that we feel should be raised.
3 commissioners, it's one of those old sayings. It's easy. 3 can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead. Well, sometimes we all know in Luzerne County the dead are still voting. I believe the dead are still serving. So, in Lackawanna.
So would you vote? I mean,
I would vote.
You would vote if you're in Lackawanna and
I've looked at the Lackawanna plan. It is superior to what we did. They've learned a lot from Luzerne County's mistakes, so they're taking that into consideration. And those that would say, well, Luzerne County made a huge mistake, we don't want to do that. You're not repeating the same mistake, folks. How
about you, Betsy? Would you vote yes or no?
Oh, absolutely. And it also gives us a chance in Luzerne County. We're coming up to the point where we can make changes now to the Home Rule Charter. And this is why I didn't even bother running for these first 5 years, because the changes, I worked on the original Home Rule Study Commission back in 2001. And so there's things that we discussed there that didn't get put into this new charter that I think would help improve. So I'm looking forward to the day when changes can be made. And I think so we're going to progress into better government, and home rule gives you the opportunity to do that. 3-commissioner form of government, no way.
Well, it's not working.
We're going to take our first break. When we come back, we'll have Mr. X. You listen to Sanity Check, and that number here is 888-577-4487 if you want to join in the conversation. We'll be right back.
Sanity Check with Tea Party Mike, Libertarian Lou, Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM The Talker.
This came, by the way, from a caller to my radio show, Jason from Washington, D.C. He's an insider. He's connected inside Washington, and that's the secret buzz going on inside the Beltway. Jason from Washington, D.C. Jason. He's an insider. He's connected inside Washington.
And we're back. 94.3 FM The Talker. This is Sanity Check. Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike. But in studio today we have Betsy Summers, Frank Sorick. Good morning, Mr. X.
Good morning.
Listen, I think Frank Sorick is one. Well, he has a question for you right off the bat.
I do. Listening to that Fox News intro that we played coming back from break, I have a question for you, Mr. X. You know where we can get a hold of this Jason?
Can we play that clip? Just so that we lay everything out, let's play what was played on Fox yesterday and certainly reported in Newsmax, and I saw Huffington Post and all these other things. Let's fill everybody in exactly what we're talking about, X, and then you could get on and you could comment.
Listen, Stuart, we still talk about Benghazi, the scandal there. We still talk about the IRS scandal. But the scandal that we forget about was the Obama administration going after the media, tapping the Associated Press, going after our colleague James Rosen, and all of that. And that thing has been swept under the rug. Nobody's talking about that scandal anymore. The media is not talking about the scandal anymore. And yet Jill Abramson, back earlier this year, she said the Obama years are a benchmark for a new level of secrecy and control. She said sources who want to come forward with stories they feel are important are scared to death they're going to be prosecuted. And that, to me, is what happened. She went over the line. Now,
she went right after the White House on the issue of secrecy from the media.
The editor of the New York Times. And so if you want control over all of that, you don't want the New York Times. I mean, they're the newspaper of record for your base. If you're the Obama administration, you don't want them saying, listen, this group over here is a bad apple group. That's exactly what she said. And I think they waited a few months. This came, by the way, from a caller to my radio show, Jason from Washington, D.C. He's an insider. He's connected inside Washington. And that's the secret buzz going on inside the Beltway.
Somebody in the administration had a word with the publisher at the New York Times and said, look, Jill Abramson, we can't have this.
Right.
We can't have the New York Times.
You've got to get rid of her.
You've got to get rid of her. And you waited a couple of months and you realize...
Because there's no other answer here. Nothing else makes sense. All of a sudden, it was a surprise. She just all of a sudden up and poof, she was gone. And the other thing about this is this thing about the pay is so bogus. It's like she got her job from the Help Wanted ads where they say, we have a job pays $48,000 a year. No, you negotiate your salary.
But it does sound a little conspiratorial, doesn't it? It could be interpreted as a conspiracy theory, couldn't it?
Very much so, but with legitimacy, in my opinion.
Good stuff, Tom. It's original. Okay, so Jason in D.C. called your radio show with the idea. You picked it up very well.
Thank you. This came, by the way, from a caller to my radio show, Jason from Washington, D.C. He's an insider. He's connected inside Washington, and that's the secret buzz going on inside the Beltway. Jason from Washington, D.C. Jason. He's an insider. He's connected inside Washington.
So, Mr. X, You pointed out the elephant in the room this past week. That was the Tom Sullivan show, which made it to the Stuart Varney Fox Business show, which has made it now all over the internet. So fill us in. Let us know what you're thinking.
Again, this idea that the executive editor of the New York Times is being fired because of financial reasons. Just, it doesn't sit right. I mean, obviously, a person negotiated their salary. They have an agreement in place. But, if you need to put out a cover story for getting rid of somebody, make it because she's maybe she's a woman. Maybe they're not paying her enough. A war on women, let's try to twist that around. But, the fact of the matter is, when you sit back and you look at what's been going on at the Times, they're supposed to be, the truth seekers, the paper of record, and even they, which have been water carriers for the administration on so many issues, are suddenly running into problems because to even cover regular news, they realize how secretive the White House has been. So the interesting thing that this goes back to is back in January, Jill Abramson gave an interview with, of all places, Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera America asked her, about what was going on with the administration. And, I'm paraphrasing her quote, but it's something to the effect of, this is the most secretive administration or White House I have ever dealt with in my 22-plus years of reporting. Now, you have to take a step back and realize, look, if this was Fox News coming out with this comment, it's one thing. But you have to understand the base supporters of the New York Times are typically a lot of this leftist progressive type characters that this is sacrilege. This is like the Pope coming out and saying, Jesus was married or something like that. I mean, this puts a shock to the entire system here. So, you can't fire her the next day, okay? But you have to probably wait a bit of time and get rid of her and put in an editor who might be more favorable in terms of talking about the administration and what they're doing, because even the journalists within the system itself are realizing that they're actually, A, being threatened with losing their jobs, possibly being charged with treason, depending on what stories they write about. And the other part being, when you step back and look at what has happened to media itself, the White House has decided that it's going to just give certain people access and close other people off. So you might be the New York Times Washington correspondent for the White House. You might never get an interview with Obama because of stuff that your executive editor had said.
So that's exactly what we have been talking about here with the Independent Gazette. And we've made a decision, X, as you know, and certainly Betsy, and we got John DiLiberto and Frank Sorick here. We don't care if you don't want to interview with us. If you don't interview with us, that's part of the story. And I think that's what some of these other folks should be doing on the major news. Say, listen, the guy just don't want to talk to us but we think this is what he would say if he actually told us the truth. So what we're saying here at the Gazette, and certainly on Sanity Check Radio, you know what? If you don't want to come on, no problem. We'll fill it in for you. Go ahead, Frank.
Well, far too often you hear people saying, well, that was taken out of context, or you're relying only on part of the truth. Well, if you don't want to interview with us, that's the only choice we have, is to print the truth as we find it. So if we find documents that say one thing and you're not going to explain those documents or the decisions leading up to it, what choice do we have but to publish what we find?
Yeah,
it's the problem with journalism today, unfortunately, is that corporate media and political media, i.e., public relations advisors, have decided that they're going to control any story that comes out. So this is where you have that entire, wording that you've never heard before. I mean, up until about 15 years ago, you never heard the word talking points before. What is a talking point? A talking point is a story comes out, your side of the story needs to get their hands around it. So they send out a fax or a paper or an email to all of their minions that whatever you do, just keep talking about these three reasons for whatever, as the explanation. And just keep saying it over and over and over again. That's how you can have multiple sources, multiple interviews with different people, and everything they say is exactly the same. You're like, wait a minute, the person looks the same, but they're saying the same thing as the guy on the other channel and the person on the other channel and the channel after that. This is a coordinated effort because you cannot have anybody break ranks with what the official storyline is.
You know, I was listening to an interview with Greenwald this week, and certainly he has come out and he said, you know, the press needs to be adversarial to politicians. That's what the role should be. We shouldn't be there to hold their hands or to, you know, we have to ask the tough questions. And somewhere along the way, I believe, and I think everybody within our group here certainly felt that somewhere along the way that has went off the tracks, that somehow you're supposed to just, you know, to get the interview, to ask the tough questions, that, you know, that's what journalism should be. And we've turned that around, and we're going to continue to turn that around.
There was, I think it was back maybe in January, I actually saw a TV show, I think it was on CNN. A woman reporter, did a thing on Benghazi. Didn't say one nasty word about Hillary Clinton, but within 2 weeks, she was fired.
You know, Betsy, you're bringing something up about Hillary Clinton, and you just mentioned a little while ago, the real war on women. And, you know, we had this Boko Haram stuff going on, you know, the Sharia law, you know, Saudi Arabia, Betsy, you're not allowed, you know, women are not allowed to drive. They have to stay covered up. Where has Hillary been? You want to know the real war on women? Where has Hillary been on the war on women around the world, X or Betsy, whoever wants to jump in on this? I mean, this Sharia stuff, I mean, there's the war on women. You know,
she tweeted, Lou.
Oh, yeah, she tweeted. Yeah. Thank you. She tweeted. Oh, my God.
Posted a photo on Pinterest, did she?
Right. I mean, is this it? Is this what we're gonna talk about? You know, you hear about Romney wants to cut about maybe, you know, cut birth control pill stuff. That's the war on women. Not the people are being kidnapped, not the people that are being kept in slavery. That's not the war on women. Where are these people, X? Where is the Hillary Clintons of the world that care so much about this war on women? Where are they?
Well, they're the same type of people that when they want to lose weight, they switch to sweet and low, but still want to eat cheesecake. It's the idea that we dance around the periphery of causing a real change or a lasting change or identifying the problem correctly and going after that. That's why so much of like the environmental movement has the same basis to it. It's about, you know, you're going to solve the problems by putting in a 2-gallon flush toilet or putting in these crazy shower heads where you have to spend 5 times as long in the shower trying to get the soap out of your hair as if you had a regular shower head, because you're doing something for the environment. You know, it's all a bizarro world. But what it does is it doesn't change the existing system. It just makes people feel like they're contributing in some way. I mean, what does a Twitter picture or a hashtag or something like that have anything to do with these women in the situation that's going in Nigeria? You know, I sit there and I realize the country of Nigeria has some of the most restrictive gun laws in the entire African continent. What would have happened had somebody near there been armed? Because it's pretty
because
easy
they're
to
taking your
kidnap
kid.
200 girls if I have the gun.
That's a good point there, too. You know, I mean, it's the same thing. Let's disarm everybody so that we could, you know, those in power could take care of us. That's another thing.
That's what this political discussion, this is what this New York Times, this is what the war on journalism is about. The left is having an incredibly hard time trying to spin what's been going on in terms of the secrecy coming out of the administration. And as this is going forward, remember, it runs totally counter to everything that they've been trying to talk about. They created an illusion that the right was controlling, we're not. The right was, right or wrong. The whole point, though, is they're just as bad. You know, this is where, like, the Libertarian leans out on me on this stuff, is the fact that you can look at both sides and realize how incredibly controlling they are. And really, at the end of the day, as you alluded to earlier, Lou, all Americans, no matter what their political stripe, can always agree on truth, transparency, you know, sunshine, cleaning up the majority of our problems. The problem is both Republicans and Democrats. That's one thing that would erode their power base.
On that note, we're going to take a break, and as we go into break, we're going to play that poem that was sent to us by one of our listeners and supporters, and it has to do with family courts and what's going on in the courts. And we have other breaking news here yet today that nobody else knows about. That's Frank Sorick is going to break some news about what the Taxpayers Association levied on, I guess, Wilkes-Barre City, right? Wilkes-Barre City. So we're going to listen to our poem. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about the courts, about some of the other things that we got into this past week. You're listening to Sanity Check, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
Pennsylvania Sanity Check. The Sanity Check team began to gel early in the year of 2012. While the team is full of delight, their priority is to get the message right. This broadcast meets a great need. They restrain the courts from their own greed. Join all those denied justice in court. Raise your voice in united retort. Cheated by the court? Come join the fray. Your quest for justice must begin right away. Sanity Check broadcast their plan. Have the people document their grievances throughout this great land. Democracy threatened by judicial ukase. Time is critical. We must end this disgrace. The situation now is truly unreal. Judicial proceedings now a license to steal. Thousands of victims whose stories we seek. Justice denied every day of the week. The Pledge of Allegiance, as we recall, promises liberty and justice for one and all. A justice system in which we once had pride. Pecksniffian behavior conceals corruption inside. The real terrorist threat is corruption within. That is why exposure must begin. Litigants ignored, we know how you feel. Evidence distorted for the sake of the deal. How did we arrive in this corrupt mess? Part of the reason is the indolent press. Suppressed by the courts, failed in their mission. To do their job, to press needs manumission. Things are often worse than they seem. Attorneys and judges share a revenue stream. Court corruption, a somnambulant press. Where that will lead, I don't want to guess. The founding fathers can only grieve, as media does not grasp what a free press was designed to achieve. Habeas corpus, once the great writ, diminished by courts that routinely dismiss. Constitutional duties violated for no reason. Who is responsible for prosecuting treason? Benjamin Franklin, what a great mind. The civil rights leader of his time. Declaration of Rights in Constitution defined. No longer recognized in courts of our time. Unlimited power regardless of season. Courts can put you in jail. They don't need a reason. Historically, people of New England have shown us the way. Close corrupt courts, said Daniel Shea. What the courts sorely need is legislative review. That is why we broadcast to you.
If you've been let down
as we roll down this unfamiliar road, and although this wave is stringing us along, just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
And this is your home, 94.3 FM The Talker. This is Sanity Check. Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike, Betsy Summers in studio, Frank Sorick's in studio, and certainly the home of the Independent Gazette. And I'd like to let our listeners know that we are expanding. Thanks to their support and thanks for the people that have supported us over this journey for 2 years. We were in, when Mike was in Wilkes-Barre this past week, and John DiLiberto, we sat down with a number of individuals to want to see us expand, and this is just the beginning. We can say that the July 4th edition, just like we had our first edition, July 4th edition, in Wilkes-Barre 2 years ago, and then 1 year ago, Betsy and Frank and X, we had our July 4th edition of Scranton. We can say that this July 4th, we will be printing in certainly Scranton and Wilkes-Barre, but Carbon County, Lehigh and Palmerton will have its first edition printed.
All right.
And the Pocono will be printed, and perhaps one other. So we have some exciting times, and we're going to make a difference. And I want people to know that are listening to us, thank you. Thank you for the support. Thank you certainly for our subscribers that are subscribing. Thank you for those who have put in an enormous amount of time time, treasure, and talent. The 3 T's. Some people have put in their treasure. Some people have put their talent, and many people have put in a lot of time, and some folks have put all 3 in. So certainly, and I just before we break some more news here, Frank, and talk about what's happened in the courts here and stuff like that, I'd like to just hear what Frank and Betsy and X have to say about our expansion and where we're going and what their thoughts are. You want to start off, Frank?
It's great news. I mean, it's the people of Carbon County now have a voice to get out the information that they need to get out that the current media is not allowing for whatever reason.
Right.
Whether it's their subscribers or their advertisers they're worried about losing. That's one thing you don't have to worry about with an independent press is we will print what matters to you.
Yeah. And one of the reasons when we came up with the idea of the Independent Gazette is that voter apathy is just rampant. And so we realized we had to educate people so that they could start thinking and realize that they do have the power to change things, whether it's by writing a letter to the editor that will actually get printed, where they're hearing the other side of the story.
Different points of view.
And just when we go out and we deliver these papers, I have like an 80-year-old guy. He's like, "Oh, you're the one of the ones who does this paper. I love this paper. This tells it how it is."
Right.
And so I think, in the long run, all over this area where our paper is touching lives, maybe voter participation will go up. Maybe they won't worry about voting for a third party or independent candidate. Maybe they will go to a city council meeting or a county council meeting and speak up and say, we're not going to take it anymore.
X, before I get your opinion on this, Betsy, you just talked about maybe a third party candidate. Is there others besides Pashinski who you're going to be running against? Is there somebody locally here that voted no on SB 76 that might not have a primary candidate?
I have not gotten through the whole list yet. But
next week we could talk about that,
yes.
and the primaries will be over.
Yeah.
And certainly if you're registered a Republican or Democrat, we urge people to get out, let your voice be known.
That's right.
Support those that you have a passion for.
They don't make it easy. Like, you can't go on the internet and get an Excel file that says this is how this person voted, what district they cover. They have it in alphabetical order, sorted by Republican and Democrat. So, I mean, to cross-reference these people's votes, I'm going through representative by representative. So it's
I don't mean to
easy.
interrupt you, Betsy, but the Pennsylvania Taxpayer Cyber Coalition, the PTCC.org, they do have a full list of everybody on their website who is supporting 76. So just take that list, cross-reference it against those who are currently serving.
And then after this primary, Frank.
Yeah.
Right.
This is a list of the no's right here.
There you go.
And no's and yeses. So this is all the votes, and I'm cross-referencing it. So I will have a list.
So, X, what do you think? Good news about us moving ahead here, slowly but surely. What was that? The tortoise and the hare. We're moving ahead.
Anything you can do to spread the footprint, it becomes like a snowball rolling down the hill. At a certain point, it's unstoppable. And this is the great battle that goes on every day, is to constantly make progress, and no matter how small a step it is, because at some point, those in the halls of power will have even a greater reason to respond to what's going on. If you get a call from the Independent Gazette, and this was 2 years ago, you could hang up the phone. Now, if you're in Wilkes-Barre and some of the other towns, Wilkes-Barre Independent Gazette calls, guess what? You're going to have to take take that call.
We're going to put you in the paper.
Hey, they could say no, X, and they have. I mean, you remember the article that I wrote, the spokesperson won't speak to Gazette.
Right.
I mean, that was, she told me right out, I don't have to answer to you. I said, okay, that was the story.
And talking about spokespersons that are not talking to you, Frank, you have certainly filed many rights to know.
Yes.
And I don't believe that anybody has this information, but
They do not.
you moved ahead a little bit, and
We did.
the Taxpayers Association, and I believe you filed.
On Thursday, we filed an action in Luzerne County Court of Common Pleas against the city of Wilkes-Barre to seeking a review of a final determination we received in requesting documents from 2009 from the Department of Revenue to the city of Wilkes-Barre, in where the city paid the Department of Revenue over $5,000 in fines. We want to know why.
Sure.
And every time we've asked what generated the city to issue that check, or what caused you to issue that check, they provide us a copy of the check and say that's all we have. Well, that's not good enough. You must have received a bill. You must have received a letter, something. And we know what this is. This letter was printed by, well, it wasn't printed in its entirety, but reference to the letter was printed by the Citizen's Voice, claiming that this letter urged the city back in 2009 or warned the city that they were not permitted to put any liquid fuels into any vehicle that did not bear municipal plates.
So now this is going back to our
Gasgate.
friend, the king.
This is going back to Gasgate, is where this is. Yeah.
With that bulletin board that you guys put up. About
billboard.
The billboard with.
So we just want the document where, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, if the Department of Revenue told you in 2009 you can't do something, and you continued to do that something, that proves full well that you knew what you were doing was wrong.
And a little bit more on your on your lawsuit, right?
Well, the OOR relied, in making their determination, they relied wholly on an affidavit submitted by the city administrator, Marie McCormick, where the city administrator claims to have called the Department of Revenue, no reference to who she spoke to or anything like that in her affidavit, just that she spoke with someone at the Department of Revenue, and they claim they don't have the letter either. So therefore, no letter exists. However, I also submitted an affidavit when I got a copy of hers that says I spoke with Elizabeth Prestel, the press secretary of the Department of Revenue, and she confirmed on the phone with me, knowing who I was from the Independent Gazette. She said, I do have a copy of the letter. However, I can only provide that letter to the taxpayer directly, in this case, the city of Wilkes-Barre. So the city has to request a letter from them, and my right to know request was to the city for that letter, and they claim they don't have it and that they can't get it. Well, they are in constructive possession of the letter. They can request it from Elizabeth. They can get it, and that's what our lawsuit seeks. And also, we submitted a legal brief in our lawsuit that claims that the affidavit that Marie McCormick submitted is erroneous in the fact that she didn't mention who she spoke to, number one, and that this is not the first time that Mrs. McCormick has submitted an affidavit, and where we later find out the claims made by McCormick's affidavit are not entirely true. I call your attention to a 2002 case where a private citizen, the average Joe, sought credit cards from the city of Wilkes-Barre.
Remember.
And the city said, hey, we don't have those credit cards. In fact, they never existed. Here's a letter from the bank. And they claim they don't have them either. And that's what they submitted, was an affidavit by Mrs. McCormick saying, hey, those credit card statements never existed. However, the citizen filed a lawsuit similar to what we're doing, and it was discovered through the course of that lawsuit that not only did the credit cards exist, but they contained information the city didn't want out.
So once again, taking it to the next level, we will have something up on our website. I believe you're going to do a press release for all the press, but they might jump on this now. That it might be in the paper sooner, as usual. Yeah. So the Independent Gazette
breaks the story. Right.
We're going to take a break. When we come back for our final segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the courts and a few other interesting tidbits.
Tea Party Mike, Libertarian Lou, Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM The Talker.
Say what you want to say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I want to see you be brave.
We want to see everybody be brave. You're listening to 94.3 FM The Talker. We're back. Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike. We have Betsy Summers in studio. Frank Sorick. X is still on the line. This past week, once again in Wilkes-Barre, we get tipped off. I get a picture sent to my iPhone, and it has the records, the fiscal adoption records for Wilkes-Barre. A box sitting on a garbage can. And next to the garbage can is the shredder. The shredding company is there, right? Okay. They shred documents, I suppose. That's a normal procedure, except for when you tried to ask what the procedure is. Then it no longer becomes normal, because lo and behold, we're in Wilkes-Barre. First of all, we converge. Our whole group, Betsy's looking at me, her eyes wide open. The whole group converges, right? Spruce and Adams, okay? And here, all of a sudden, people, you got to get there, you got to get there. We get there, the shred is gone, but we have the pictures, okay? So later on that afternoon, we go to CYS, Children and Youth Services, in Luzerne County. And by the way, when we also talk about brave, one of the individuals that was at our rally this past week, well, 2 weeks ago, she was just informed that not only did her court-appointed lawyer recuse himself, but she was advised that not to hang out with the Independent Gazette because we are built on lies. And Frank, you remember?
I do.
I mean, we've heard this story before.
Oh, yeah. We're the fake media. We're not answering to you.
We're not answering to you. You guys don't tell the truth.
But
and lo and behold,
we've been followed on a lot of our stories, and because we're a monthly paper, we have a little more time to investigate certain allegations.
Right.
And when we print something, we make sure, to the best of our ability, that we're printing the facts as they're uncovered. And we've been followed by the Citizens' Voice, the Times Leader, even Times Shamrock, Scranton Times has followed the Independent Gazette stories, and not one of them have said, hey, the Independent Gazette got it wrong.
Right.
They've printed either what we've printed in different types of detail, but they've never once exposed the Gazette story for being false. So where is this?
That's
person
our
getting...
normal. That's just
right.
But once again, that intimidation factor, and once again, our time, the fastest hour in radio is flying by, and I want to make sure that we get some of this in. So anyway. Here, myself and Tara Koval's helping me write this story. We're writing this story together on this particular issue. So we go up to CYS and we ask the question: Who just give us what's the procedure? We just want to know how the procedure works. We know that files do get shredded and then they put them on, microfiche or whatever. At least they should be. But in this particular case, it seemed as though that those files were getting shredded a little too soon, which we still haven't been ascertained at. But anyway, we had no answers. So we are now sent to the solicitor. Okay, the solicitor will have the answer.
What firm is the solicitor with, I wonder?
Oh, she's private. She's a private practitioner, which she brought up.
Okay.
We knocked on her door at 3:30 in the afternoon, and we're still trying to ascertain whether she's full-time or part-time, or is this theft of services? Is she working on her own stuff? Those are all different things. So anyway, we go there, Betsy, right? We go there and I start asking questions about the shredding. I know nothing. I don't know what you're talking about, she tells me. Are you a real reporter? Once again, are you a real reporter?
What's
right
a real reporter?
Right. You're not asking the right questions, she says to me, right? And I says, okay. I said, well, do you shred documents? Ever, she says. I says, yes, ever. Do you ever shred documents? Do you ever shred documents? Yes. So you shred documents. Don't put words in my mouth. I said, what are you talking about putting words in your mouth? So anyway, at the end of the conversation, you guys know where this whole thing is going, Bradley. Right. What was it going? So I said to her, are you a real solicitor? I said, do you know anything? I mean, is there anything I could ask you that perhaps you might be able to answer? So on the way back, right? And then she says, I've never heard of you guys. I don't know what you. She's doing all this stuff. So anyway, I on the way back, I'm thinking, she knows nothing. She sees it. So now we're going to send her a clip of the tape here. Okay, this is Janine Pavalone. Okay, so now we're going to brand her just like Harry. Never say no to a new tax. Haas. She's now going to be the Sergeant Schultz.
She knows nothing, sees nothing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know nothing. I see nothing, and I say nothing.
Can you play that again?
I know nothing. I see nothing, and I say nothing.
Say of the people we pay. How much is he getting paid?
She doesn't know.
She doesn't know. Are you full-time? Meanwhile, why are you coming to my private practice? I don't know. They just
Where's
sent me
your
over
public
there.
office?
They just sent me. Where's your public office?
I don't know.
Where can I go? I don't know. I
Where's
know
the
nothing.
document? Shredded.
Shredded. Right. I mean, that was. I mean, this is unbelievable. X. I mean, this is what we face here on a daily basis. I mean, every day this happens to us.
You're not asking the right questions.
You're not asking the right questions. What questions you want me to ask?
She doesn't know.
She doesn't know. X, what are you thinking?
Well, again, the great thing about the Independent Gazette and a free and open press is that we are the light that makes all the cockroaches run.
A lawyer and a cockroach have what in common?
But
They both scatter when the light
reaffirms the reason of why the press is needed and an independent press is needed.
Yeah.
Because remember, if we're not there to turn on the light, so to speak, the cockroaches think they've got free run of the joint.
They do. I mean, that's another thing I want to know. I mean, we're going to talk about. I'm telling you, we are looking into some of these solicitors, not only for CYS but for these court-appointed solicitors. Everybody has a solicitor, Frank. I've never seen anything like it. How much do they get paid? What do they do? I don't understand. They have private practice, but they're getting paid full-time salary. I don't know about this particular one.
And
benefits all over the place.
Look at just the city of Wilkes-Barre. I mean, a small city of 40,000 has 2 full-time solicitors for the city, and then every single authority, board, everything has a solicitor. So
isn't one of them the cousin?
Yeah. Well,
what's his name?
Bill Visco.
Oh, Visco.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Leighton's cousin. There's solicitors for the solicitors now.
Right. There's solicitors for solicitors. I mean, I don't know how we're paying for all this stuff. Oh, I forgot. We're not.
Property tax.
The property tax is paying for everybody. The little old ladies are getting thrown out of the house, Betsy, because we're paying solicitors.
Right. Well,
they tell us what?
The taxpayers need to make sacrifices
what
for
are they
these.
telling us?
I know nothing, I see nothing, and I say nothing.
That's what happens. You go to him, you know Frank as well.
I know.
You ask the solicitor something. Kathy Dobash ready to pull her hair out. She says, I don't know how to get the information. She says, I'm on council.
That's why we have to file these lawsuits.
We
It's
got to
crazy.
file. It's out of control. Out of control. X, you got 10 seconds. Last word.
Just let's keep up the fight and keep showing.
There you go. Betsy.
They cut him off.
They cut him off. Betsy, 10 seconds.
I know nothing.
You know nothing? Good to have you here, Betsy. Listen, we'll be following your race against Eddie Day. Eddie Day. Another one.
Republicans write in Betsy Summers.
Frank, what do you got to say?
I know nothing. I see nothing. I hear nothing.
So we encourage. Once again, we're going to encourage folks out there. We know it's tough. It's not easy to stand up. There is this huge intimidation when you speak out. We'll be there as best as we can. And as we grow, as we get more of a voice, we are helping those that all of a sudden do not feel like they're out there alone.
They're not alone. They have us with them.
And for Mike Lacey, who is out, I'm gonna take over for him now. God bless everybody. You guys have a great weekend, and we'll be back next week. Sanity Check.
If you've been let down by the political class, then you're looking for Sanity Check Saturday mornings on 94.3 FM.